In this lecture, we'll work on logging users in, logging users out, and then protecting pages. Now in the last lecture, we used this about page right here to log users in by adding them into the query string. So we'll log in Mary right here with the user ID of 4, and then we use the home page to print out kind of the status of what's happening with our session. We see that Mary's logged in, and then we use this links page to log people out. And that was just so that we can learn how sessions work. So now I'm going to snap my fingers and remove the login and logout on the about and the links page, and then set up a login page. Alright, I have this login page. Now up in my navigation bar, I removed the register link and I just replaced it with a login link here on my login page. And I added a link to the register page right here, so when I click on register, I receive welcome, please register. And just to make sure that it highlights the login area when I print up the header down here, the link that I want to have highlighted will now be login. So I also, on all my pages, I added this set call to session start. So on my assignments link, I start my session. On my cookies, I make sure I start my sessions. The links and the about already had that, and I took out the login and the logout from the about and the links. But I did leave the session status here on the home page so we can still see if someone's logged in or not. And this can be used to debug right here. And then lastly, I created this login page right here. And here's the code for the login page right here. I just start my session, require my functions, require the header, print the header out, and then I have a form with an email and a password field and a submit button, and of course my link to the register page right here. So we're going to set this up much like the register page, so the action will go right back to the login page and the same page up here, and we're going to use that variable valid post again, assume that it's true, and then I'll snap my fingers and set this up like the register page. So here I have this familiar if statement checking to see if it's a post request. If it's not a post request, we'll set valid post to false, which will cause the form to get printed up. Now if it is a post request, right here is where we usually do our validations, and for the validations of the login page, we just want to check to make sure the user got an email and password correct. And if they continued on and did get everything correct, then we'll keep valid post true, and we'll redirect the user to a page and exit out of the script. So even though there's no validations or no checking their email and password, we could see how this page works. When they click the login link, they'll see the form. And when they click login, they should see redirect user, meaning everything worked. Now if they didn't get a correct email or password, then we'll have the form show up again with an error message saying incorrect email or password. So let's go ahead and try to validate their password, their email and their password. And what we'll do at first is calculate the hashed password. And if you remember back in the database lecture, we just hashed up the password. So we'll get the password out right there, and we'll hash it up, and that will give us a hash password. Now we need to check the database. So to be able to do database operations, we have to connect to the database, and we'll write a SQL statement. And we'll go ahead and select star from our users table where, and we'll continue this on the next line and make sure we concatenate on more, and we want the email right here equal to the email that they posted right here, so we'll concatenate that in. That, and we also want to check their password. So there's two ways we could do this. We could pull out the user with this email and then make sure their passwords match, or we could only pull out the user if their hash password matches. So go ahead and check to see make sure their hash password equals, and I forgot the quote mark right there. We'll go ahead and make sure their hash password equals the password that they just submitted on the form. So just a quick review, they submitted a password, and they also submitted an email right here to our form. We hash up the password, and we put this in here, and we create a SQL statement, and we're going to look for a user with that email and that hash password. So this will either return a user or return no users. And so to check before we run this, we'll just echo out this SQL statement and concatenate on a line break right there. And so we'll go ahead and try to log in Fred at fred.com, and we can see we see select star from user row, the email equals Fred and Fred at fred.com, and the hash password equals this. And of course we haven't invalidated the post, so we're assuming we find that person and redirect them. But now we need to run this SQL statement. So we'll get the MySQL query right here, and we'll run our SQL statement. And if it didn't work, then result will be false. So if result is false, we might want to print out an error message. And quit our script right there. This just means the SQL statement didn't work. It doesn't mean that it didn't find someone. And so we'll check to see if it found someone. If the number of rows that it returned is not equal to 1, then it didn't find, then it might not have found someone. It's either 0 or more than 1, so hopefully there's only one user with this email, so hopefully it will only return 1 row. But if it's 0, then we'll get into inside of here because it's not equal to 1, so we'll assume that this means that we didn't find a user. So we can go ahead and set an error login error message saying invalid email password, like that. Or we can just maybe set this variable to true, since this is the only error that we're going to check for on this page. And then down here we'll enter into PHP mode, and if there is a login error right here, so if there is a login error, then we'll go ahead and print out, I'll do some inline style. Remember, you should do some styling in the CSS, but we'll go ahead and print out invalid email password right here, and make sure we enclose it in a paragraph tag like that. So and we also need to make sure up here that we make sure it's not a valid post anymore, because we checked the database, and we didn't find a user. We ran this query and we didn't find that it returned 1 row, so we're assuming it was 0, so we're saying that there's a login error and that the valid post is false. That'll skip over this redirection right here and print up the form, and we also set login error to true so that this prints out. So let's go ahead and try that. Go ahead and log in someone it's not there, and you can see we ran this SQL query and it says invalid email or password. So then they'll try again. If you want, you can go ahead and fill in their email, leave their email filled in. They can try a different password, or you can just leave it blank and make them retype their email right there. But so if we get all the way down to here and it's a valid post, then we know that we found someone. So we'll go right here, and now that we know that we found someone, we'll get that user out by using MySQL fetch associative, and that gives us an associative array from the user from the database. And then we can use our session right here and set their user ID to the user ID that they found in the database. Now remember, in my session I'm storing the user ID, but in the database that column is just called ID. So again, this has to match up with the database because that's where it came from right there, and this just has to match up with what we have in this session. And we'll also store their email in the session as well. So now that we have this, the user should be logged in, so go ahead and try it with Fred and get the password right. And now it says redirecting user. And go to the home page, and we see that Fred, sure enough, got logged into our session. So now that he's logged in, we might not want this login link here anymore. So we'll have to go ahead and maybe replace that link with a logout link now that he's logged in. So going back to our functions.php file right here, we will want to check to see if they're logged in or not. And if they're logged in, then we can replace this login link with a logout link. But how do we check to see if they're logged in? Well, that's stored in the session. And just so that our login and logout logic doesn't get too confusing, it'd be really nice to create some functions here. One function called login, and we'll take in a user ID and an email to log in a user, and we'll go ahead and set the session variables to what they pass in this function right here, and we'll set the email as well. And again, this is in the functions.php file. We're just creating a login function, and then we can also create a function that logs someone out. We don't need to know who. We'll just unset the variables in the session. So if we remember in the last lecture, this code right here is how we log someone in, and this code right down here is how we log someone out. So we'll erase the user ID out of the session. Now the reason why I'm using functions is I want all of my login and status information in the same file. We might have more than one place where we log in a user and another place where we log out the user on different pages, but when we create these functions in our functions.php file, they're all in the same place, and we just call these functions to log people in and out. And we can also create a function called isLoggedIn, like that, and this can return true or false if the person is logged in. And so we could say if is set right here, if a user ID is set, then that means that there's somebody logged in, so we can return true. And if not, return false. Right there. So now we have all of our login logic stored really closely in the same page. We can see it all at the same time. That way, if we change what it means for somebody to be logged in, we can change it all just in one place instead of have it scattered across our website. And that'll let us use the is logged in function right here to decide what kind of link to put. If they're not logged in, then we can put a login function, and if they are logged in, then we can put a logout page, a link to logged out. So now let's see if that worked. And so we have the logout page right there, but we haven't created the page, so it won't go anywhere. But let's go ahead and return back to our login, and instead of setting these, we'll go ahead and use the function that we just created and pass in the ID and the email so that the login function can work. And also remember to make sure that you start your session before you call these functions, or else they won't work. So now in order to test this, we have to log Fred out. So we need to do more testing. We need to clear out our session or log Fred out. So let's go ahead and create the logout page, and I'll snap my fingers and do that. Okay, so now I just created a page. I didn't even require the header or print out a header because my intention is to just log the person out and then redirect them to some page. We'll do the redirection a little later, but we'll go ahead and start our session. Then we'll require the functions.php page, and once we have that, then we can just call the logout function that I created in my functions page right there. And so that'll log the user out, and then they'll see this message right here. So let's see how that works. We'll click on the logout page. It says you're logged out. Go back, and now we can see that there on our index page that there isn't a user logged in. And now our navigation bar changed to give us a login link. And once we log in again, we're going to redirect the user. But now that we're logged in, we can see that Fred is logged in, and we have a logout link right here. So now we know both of those are working. So next, let's get these redirections working so that they don't have to click on another link. So right here, all we have to do is set our session flash message that we set up in our last lecture to you're logged out, and then use our location, and we'll just redirect them to the index.php page right there. And we don't need any content, so we can just delete all that out right there. And so we'll go ahead and try this again. Log in as Fred, and now we see that we get this logout link, and now we're on the home page and it says you are logged out. Now one thing to note, notice I got it working without redirecting the user, and then once I knew it was all working, then I added in the redirection next. I highly recommend you do that because once you start redirecting things, it starts to get really hard to debug if you don't do everything just right. So always put in the redirections last on your page. So the next page that we want to work on the redirection is the login page. And we'll go ahead and put them, we'll go ahead and redirect them to the members.php page so they can see everybody that's registered. After they log in, they'll go to the members.php page, and of course we should set a flash message to you are logged in. Again, it's important on every page that you have that you include this session start, or none of these session or flash messages will work, and none of the login logic will work either. So let's go ahead and try logging in as Fred again. And now we get this error that I told you about before, and you can't modify the header information right here. And how we're getting modifying, or where's our output starting? It says output started on line 13, and if you notice on line 13 I'm printing out my SQL statement. So let's go ahead, log out, log back in. And so now, since I'm not printing out my SQL statement, I can go ahead and log in. And we can try logging in as someone else as well. And we're logged in as Bob. And then we can try logging in and messing up our password. And then we get invalid email and password. And we can try logging in as Bob again. And we can see that we logged in. So now we have a way to log in people, log in users and log out users, but we still need to protect pages, because even if I'm logged out, I can still see this members page, and I can still see Bob, and I can delete Bob even if I'm logged out. So next we'll talk about how we can protect pages. Now the first page we'll protect is this members page. We'll figure we won't give anybody access to this page until they create an account and log in. So let me pull up that code right here. And before we start getting a user out of the database and printing out his information down here, we want to make sure the person is logged in. So after we start our session, we need to make sure we start our session. Then you might want to check to see if the person is logged in. So we need the functions the functions page required, because we have our is logged in function in that file right there. So what we can do is we can check and see if they're not logged in, like that. Then we want to make sure they don't get the rest of this page. So one thing that we can do is exit, and that'll quit the script right here. And if I check that, when I go to the members page, then we don't get anything right here. Now instead of just giving them an empty page, let's go ahead and just redirect them to the home page, and then we'll also make a message saying invalid request. Now I like putting invalid request instead of you're not authorized to see this page. That way if they're trying to do damage, they won't keep trying to find a way in. They'll just think that that's not something that they can do right there. So we can set a message and then just redirect them back to index.php, just like that. And so now when we refresh this page, we see invalid request. We'll go to members, and we'll keep seeing this invalid request until we log in. And now we see that you're logged in right here. Now this is something that we want to do on all of our pages, instead of just the members page, but all of the pages that we want to protect, like say the member page where we see one person, of course the update page and the delete page as well. We'll want to protect all of these pages. So let's go ahead and turn this into a function in our functions page. So we'll pull up that code, and right after this is logged in function, we can go ahead and create another function called Authenticate. And this will just do exactly what we were doing right there. So just fill it in here. If they're not logged in, redirect them to the home page saying invalid request, and then we'll exit. So now that we have that function, then right after we include the functions page, we can just call authenticate, and that will that will make sure they're logged in before they see pages. So now we'll go back to the members page, and it works if they're logged in. We'll logged out, and then try going to the members page, and we see this invalid request. That brings up one thing. We're giving them a link up here to the members section, and when they click on it, they're just sent to the home page with an invalid request. So we probably don't want this link to show up if they're not logged in. So going back to the functions page where we create our nav bar right here, we'll probably want to make this link and only make it if we are logged in. Just like that. And now there's no members page, but then we'll log in and log in that way. And now we have the authenticate page working. So now let's work on the member page right here on this page, so that we can protect this page from people. Even though they might not have a link to it, they still might remember the URL and try to go to it, and then see somebody that we don't want to see. So we'll pull up that code right now. And one thing that I forgot to do is start my session. So let's start that. At the top, we won't know if anybody's logged in or logged out if we don't do this start session. And then right after we call the functions page, we can call authenticate. Right after we require the functions page in, then we can call authenticate, and that'll protect this page from being visited by people that are not logged in. So let's try that. We'll refresh, and now we'll see that we are logged in. Because I didn't call session start, it thought I wasn't logged in, but we'll go ahead and log out and then try to go to our members page, or member.php, and we'll try to see a user with ID of 1, and then we get redirected to invalid request right there. And I'm going to really quickly snap my fingers and protect the update and delete pages. So I just called this authenticate function right after I included the functions in my page on the update page and the delete page right here. And so now all of those pages should be protected. So we can just add this function onto any page that we want to have protected. So one thing that we'll do here is we see that there's this logout link, but it is kind of hard to tell that we're logged in on other pages right here. So we might want some sort of text indicating that we are logged in and who we're logged in as. So we'll do this right underneath the nav bar. We can just create another div, and we can, since we're requiring our functions up here, we can use this is logged in to see if we want to print that out. If we are logged in, then we'll want to do this div right here. And in the div we'll say welcome, go into PHP mode, and we can just print their email stored in the session. And so now we see welcome Fred at fred.com. Now we might want to style this up and maybe position it in a different spot, but that's how we would have some indicator on whether or not they're logged in. And if you log out, now you can see that that text no longer shows up. Okay, there's one last thing that we can do to make this a little bit more user-friendly. And let's say that somewhere in my bookmarks I saved my profile, which is member.php ID equals 1. If you notice, I just got redirected right to the home page and it said invalid request. Now I might be a little bit confused on where my profile is. But the reason why I get invalid requests is I'm not logged in, so I can't see my profile, but even though it's in my history. So what I might want to do, instead of automatically redirecting them to the home page and saying invalid request, is I might want to redirect them to the login page with a message that says you need to log in to view this page. So let's go ahead and do that next. We'll pull up our functions page right here, and here's our authenticate page that automatically redirects them to the or this authenticate function that automatically redirects them to index.php. Well, instead of redirecting them to index.php, we'll redirect them to login.php, and then it says you must log in to view that page. So now that we have that done, we'll go ahead and try going back to my bookmarked member profile, and now we see that you must log in to view that page. And that's a little bit more user friendly. Now I can log in. Now that I'm logged in, now I have to click on this link right here to view my profile. But I can go even further. Instead of always redirecting them to members.php when I log in, I can redirect them to the page that they were trying to get to in the first place. The only thing is I need to know what page that is in order to redirect them to that. I need to know that page and then remember it. So to be able to know what page that is and remember it, we probably should store that in the session before I redirect them. So there is a in this not the session but the server associative array, there is a variable called request URI, and that is the page that they're currently on, or the page that they're going to try to visit. So we can save that in the session, but just to make sure that we got the right thing, I'm going to start debugging. Whenever I start debugging, I want to comment out these redirections, and I'll just print this out right here. So now we'll log out, and so now we're logged out, and we'll try going back to our bookmark page right here, and now we can see that instead of getting redirected, I can see the page that I'm trying to get to, which is the same as this right here. So this is the page that I'm trying to get to that's protected, and I don't have permission to get to it, but we can save that page in the session so I can remember it later. I'll save it as the protected page right there, equals the request URI, and now that it's saved away, then I can redirect them to the login page. So refresh this page one more time. Now we see you must log in to view that page. Now let's pull in our login code right here. This is the code that logs us in. So if they post, we go ahead and check the database to see if we find a user with that email and password. If we find it, then we pull that user out of this out of the result and log them in. And then later on, this is where we redirect them. Okay, you can tell that we're always redirecting them to members.php. I'm going to comment this out so that we can do some debug stuff right here. So after they're logged in, now we want to know where to redirect them to. So I'll create a variable called redirect to, and by default, instead of the members.php page, we'll just redirect them to the home page. That's a good default place to redirect them. And now we can check to see if inside of our session there is a protected page that they were trying to get to. So if there's a protected page that they were trying to get to, we can set redirect to that protected page right there. And we won't redirect them to it right away. That's where we want to redirect them to. but we'll instead just print it out to be able to make sure everything's working right and without dealing with the redirection, the actual redirection happening. So and there. Make sure I have all my semicolons right there. And so now let's go ahead and try to log in and see what will happen. And now we can see that we're redirecting to the page that they wanted to go to. And instead of printing out the redirection, we'll go ahead and actually redirect them. So let's try this one more time. And now Fred's at his bookmark profile page right after logging in. And so maybe Fred will log out. Let's try that one more time, make sure it all works. He goes to his bookmark page. That page is protected, so he needs to log in. He'll log in. And now he's logged in and he's right at his profile. Now he logs out. Now one thing to note though is if Fred happens to log in again without using his bookmark page, he automatically goes to his profile instead of the default at home right there. Well, that's because we don't ever erase this out of the session, so we might want to remove it after we redirect them to that page. Okay, now it's still in the session, so when I log out, when I log in, it's still in the session. We haven't removed it yet because we haven't run the code. So we're going to go there one more time. But now this next time, hopefully now it's erased out of our session, and then we can log in again. And now we're on the index page, which is our default. So now that we're storing a lot of stuff in our session, it might be kind of hard to debug stuff, but if we do want to debug what's going on and see what is in the session, we can always use this var dump variable right here. And notice this is right after we log in right here, so we'll log out, log in, and now that we're dumping this, we can see everything that's inside of this session. That might help us to debug some more right there. And if we get this all working right, then we can take these out. And then we can do the var dump on the index.php page if we want to, and that will show us everything that's in our session. But let me refresh this page, and now we're logged in again. So we're almost done with this site. The only thing is once we're logged in, I'm Fred at fred.com, and I could go up here and delete Mary's account. Or I can also go to edit Bob right here, and this all works. So we still need to lock this down a little bit more and make sure that I can only edit my own information. We also might want to create an admin account so that the admin can delete other users out, users that might be abusing our site or something. And so that's what we'll do in the next lecture. We'll create an admin account, and the admin will be able to edit and update everything. And then we'll also lock down updating and deleting to just the admin, or we should only be able to update ourselves. So that's what we'll do in the final video.